Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour Show on PhillyCam TV and WPPM LP in Philadelphia. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and on today's show, we are going to talk about media justice and the fight for net neutrality. I have with me my guest, Luong from the Media Mobilizing Project, which is an organization based here in Philadelphia that's been building a movement for communication, media justice, and access to information. We're going to talk about all of the organizing day work that they do here in Philadelphia and about their latest campaign to help save the internet. We're going to tell you how you can plug into this organizing work and how you can take action to maintain net neutrality. Stay tuned for all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and I'm here at PhillyCam in Center City, broadcasting from our studios live on PhillyCam TV and also on WPPM 106.5 FM, our community radio station. And today we're going to be talking to our friends at the Media Mobilizing Project. And I'm here with Luong, who is an organizer and friend of PhillyCam. And she's been working with the Media Mobilizing Project on various issues. But we're going to be talking about their organization and net neutrality, an issue that is very close to home here at PhillyCam that affects all of our producers and members, and also all of you, the viewers and listeners out there who access the internet for your information needs. So I want to begin by introducing Media Mobilizing Project, which, if you haven't heard of it, is a wonderful organization here that's been working on a whole bunch of different media justice issues. And so Dee here is going to tell us a little bit about MMP and some of the work they do. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today, Vanessa. I really am excited to talk more about our organization, also net neutrality. So first off, Media Mobilizing's mission is to tell untold stories, especially stories that are not covered in mainstream media, and to really uplift and amplify the work of social justice organizing and resistance that's going on in Philadelphia. And this is why the internet is so important for us, because we've shifted from not only telling long-form narrative documentaries, but also doing more rapid response, going to the rallies directly that's going near City Hall and around the streets, using social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook Live. And this is why having an internet that is accessible to all and that is not blocked or censored in any way could help us tell these stories to not just other people in Philadelphia, but also the country.
But especially here in Philadelphia, we're the biggest, poorest city in the country. We are majority people of color. What does it mean for those groups, people who are experiencing poverty, people who suffer from many other forms of discrimination, including racism and homophobia, etc.? What does it mean for those groups to have access to communication?
Absolutely. We have a Media Fellows project that connect people who are doing social justice work, might not have the technical skills to know how to use a camera and record and connect them to those skills. We also do the opposite with people with the technical skills and know how to do photography and podcasting, but might not be as aware of the social justice work that's going in Philadelphia. So we put those two groups together in our Media Fellows program.
So you're doing a lot of work. I mean, PhillyCam could train everybody, so there's really only a small number of groups like us who are out there training everyday people, right? And giving them the tools, as you said, to tell their own stories, create media, but most importantly, to advocate for themselves, right?
Yeah, it's just really give them the skills to advocate for themselves on the platform they want to choose. Either is through print or through social media, or even like at PhillyCam even.
Yeah, and y'all produced many award-winning shows. So shout out to MMP. They won a Cammy Award last year for one of the programs that you produced.
I was not directly involved with any of that. I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm so proud of my colleagues who did contribute those films.
Yeah,
and really
totally.
That work.
It's exciting, to be recognized for that. How did you get involved with MMP, and what made you want to decide to organize for media justice?
Oh, I am a researcher and data analyst, and so I'm compiling the data, and I have. But a Media Mobilizing Project is a great home that give life and a human face to the data, the numbers that I've been collecting now for most of my career. And that's just given me a whole other tool box in order to do the work that I truly want to do, which is to contribute to creating better policy.
And what types of research or data are you working on? What's the kind of data that makes you excited or you think is very important? Because honestly, you can research everything, but are you looking at criminal justice or media, or tell us about some of the things that you're looking at?
I was so excited for this opportunity to look at how technology impact communities directly. And so we're currently looking at pretrial risk assessment tools. They're these algorithms, basically computer program that use personal data in order to project what might happen in the future by recognizing patterns. So we're just cataloging these algorithms that are used nationally. And right now they're being used in the courtrooms by judges, given they call them scores. And the judge or magistrate is using these scores to determine length of a sentence or whether or not to release someone prior to their court hearing, amount of bail even, or type of maximum security or maybe minimum security prison. They're used in the courtroom, they're used by law enforcement. They're also used for various other ways to determine to food stamps or housing or healthcare.
So these are algorithms that look at a number of different factors, but it kind of works like a magic 8-ball, though, right? They're not very accurate, right? They're often, more often than not, they're wrong. And my understanding is because they're inaccurately predicting that people might go on to commit crimes or, have a high rate of recidivism or something like that, then that influences sentencing and these other, access to these other resources.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The accuracy of some of these tools are oftentimes not even better than a coin toss. They're hovering around 50, 60% accuracy. So it's like playing with a die, but it's a loaded die.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this impacts disproportionately people of color, right, who are disproportionately in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, some example of the variables or factors that these algorithms tools look at include a person's age, housing situation, whether or not they're renting or owning, the level of education. A lower level of education means they're put into a riskier bracket. If you're renting and not owning, you're put into a riskier bracket. Residence, like someone's zip code, or even if they have a working phone in some places. And those are also income and stability of a job status. Those are all included.
So if you're maybe going back to your loving parents' house in North Philly and you don't have a job lined up yet, but they're working on it, and you don't have a phone yet, but they're going to hook you up, that's not all counted, because on the algorithm it just shows no, you're a higher risk.
Absolutely.
So these personal variables are not taken into account.
Yes, or they're really looking at just the data and just looking at the numbers without looking at the person as individuals.
Yeah, so this is like very sci-fi in some ways, like Minority Report,
Yes,
which
yes.
is a short story from Philip K. Dick that was turned into a movie with Tom Cruise. But it's on the same premise, like they're predicting whether or not someone's gonna commit a future crime, right? So they're really, it's just like future crimes, right? And it has no real indication of someone's personal rehabilitation or what they personally experienced when they were incarcerated or on parole or whatever.
Yeah, they're marketed as something that are pretty accurate and infallible, when in fact, if we're able to probe a little deeper and look behind the numbers, we're able to see a very different story.
So why are they using them if they're not very accurate and it's detrimental?
Well, I think because the developers are able to say, well, these are based on numbers and numbers don't lie. They're not biased. But what our research is showing is that human beings create these tools, and human beings have their own biases that are contributing to setting the parameters, and even picking out the variables, for instance, and to include and what to exclude and what to omit. And if they're able to either sell their tool or give it away for free to jurisdictions that are in governments that looking to either decarcerate or to create more efficiency in how they determine who is more at risk of showing up to court or might be recidivate, recommit, get arrested again, then that's why governments are choosing to adopt these tools.
That are ineffective, I will reiterate.
Problematic, definitely.
Yeah, MMP recently got a whole bunch of people to come out to a hearing in Philadelphia. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I was able to attend, and I was hearing individuals just testify. About 25 to 30 people came to testify, and all of them opposed the tool. Some of them might have heard about the meeting, of the hearing over the radio, and others have been following the development of a sentencing tool that's being developed by Penn State for the state of Pennsylvania. So this is for sentencing, and Philadelphia is creating a separate, there's a separate tool for pretrial hearings. And so during the hearing, it really convinced the members of the commission to pause and to reflect on the work that they've been doing over 6 years now, since they passed the legislation in order to research and develop the tool, that perhaps this is not the right time. And so they're reconsidering doing more research and revisiting this in December. And so they're still, they haven't stopped the process of implementing the tool, but they're taking pause. And so by December, they're going to have the additional research.
So in terms of another opportunity for people to take action, people who have concerns about this are still able to contact city council and other legislators to let them know that they might be opposed or have concerns with this.
Yeah, we had some speakers who say that, they might have made a mistake briefly in their past when they were in their teenage years, in their youth, but now they might have received awards from the White House, or have continued joined the military, continued to do amazing work in their adult life. But this tiny mistake that occurred in their youth will have long-term and lasting effects because the data is embedded and it just doesn't get expunged the same way juvenile records get expunged.
Yeah, and we've had a number of shows highlighting that. We had Lawyers for Social Equity talking about the problem with expungements. And we had people from victim services as well who are like, showing a side to a restorative justice where victims don't always want people incarcerated and to have these long-term effects. Sometimes the justice they seek is just personal, but the criminal justice system intervenes. And then we've had numerous people talk about the drug war, and especially young Black men from the ages of 17 to 25 who are most likely to be profiled, harassed, and arrested for marijuana offenses.
Absolutely.
And then those, are very hard to expunge. And then we had our friends in New Jersey who are like, we're trying to legalize and create this industry, but it's excluding felons who can't, then participate in a legal industry that other people would profit from. So there's like a lot of layers to this and a lot of ramifications. But I just want to say, you should check out Next Step Reentry Radio, which is a new show on WPPM, and it will be on tonight at 5. And in terms of telling stories, it is a group of men who are from Philly and are returning citizens to talk about some of the good work that they're doing and who are becoming advocates for this community and letting people know, no, we're not lifelong criminals. Some of us were unjustly incarcerated. Some of us were youth. Some of us just made a mistake that we were sorry for and we paid for and would like to move on with our lives. So having these voices, these personal accounts, I think are really important, because otherwise, like you said, they're just numbers. It's just data.
Yeah, thank you for that, bringing that up. That sounds like a really great show. I look forward to catching it. It's, for example, often these algorithms would use arrest records and not conviction records, which means someone hasn't even had a fair trial yet, but they're using the data from that. And so, of course, in our Constitution is due process and equal protection law that's been denied because of these tools. Also, when you talk about mandatory minimums, a marijuana amount the size of a Post-it, pack of Post-its, is going to lead to 10 years in prison, or marijuana the size of a ketchup packet is going to lead to 5 years of mandatory minimums. And so I'm really happy to see that a lot of reforms are taking place to end this practice.
Yeah, well, that's something that I want to highlight in a lot of these legalization laws that are being proposed in various states like New Jersey. There is no change to the people that are already serving mandatory minimum sentences. So there's literally people incarcerated that have maybe been sentenced recently to serve 10-year long sentences. It makes no sense whatsoever, especially given that these are nonviolent offenders, right?
Absolutely.
And in so many other states, white people are profiting from the market. And I say that because 90% of the cannabis industry in the United States is owned by white people. So there is a racial element into who is directly impacted, similar to the crack and cocaine mandatory minimums, right? Like people that were sentenced for crack convictions got significantly higher sentences, and they tended to be more Black and Latino. And people for cocaine got much lower sentences, tended to be white. So these are all again, we got to identify all the variables, right? I think that's part of your research, right? What are all the variables that go into these decisions, right?
Before I said marijuana, I meant to say crack cocaine. Thank you.
Yeah.
For the mandatory minimums.
Yeah, because again, it's a huge disparity, and it's literally the same exact drug, just in a different format. So, what's next though in terms of what you're doing with this research? Are y'all trying to organize more people to speak out?
Well, our policy director, Hannah Sassman, is working with other national civil rights groups to create a set of principles.
So at the leadership conference.
At the leadership conference in DC. In addition to that, Media Mobilizing Project specifically is creating a platform that's available on the web in order for social justice groups and community groups to better understand what goes into these tools that are impacting sentencing and pretrial. Yeah.
So people should definitely check out Media Mobilizing Project's website to read more. There's definitely some fascinating coverage of this. And, and some groups are completely against any use of these tools, like at all. And then, there's others that say, well, if you're going to use these tools, this is what you should also do or take into account. So there's a lot of opinions on this, and we encourage our listeners and our viewers out there to do your own research on the pre-trial risk assessment tools. So if you're just tuning in or watching, you're viewing the People Power Lunch Hour show on Philly Cam TV and on WPPM 106.5 FM. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and I've been talking with Dee Luong, who is from the Media Mobilizing Project. And we've been talking about some of the organizing work that she does as part of this organization. And we just talked about how they train people to learn how to create their own media and tell their own stories. And then some of the other policy and research work that she and Hannah Sassman work on when it comes to pretrial risk assessment tools and how that impacts people's, literally their freedom, right? And the criminal justice system. What made you want to do research and deal with data? That's kind of a nerdy thing, like the data, right? But it can be very exciting.
It is absolutely, and I'm always interested. I think everyone has an interesting story to tell, and so early on, I wanted the ability to tell a story that is kind of free of opinion, and I really thought that somehow the data itself will be free of that. But over the last year, since I started my career about a decade ago, I've learned that it's not always true, and that is always someone behind it and shaping it, and it's a conversation someone could that we need to have with data. That's continually a living, breathing thing that doesn't just end with data itself.
And we need activists who are researchers too, right?
Oh, right.
Not just people in the streets protesting, which is cool. We need that as well. But we need people kind of attacking us from all sides, right? We need lawyers who are advocating for people in court. We need our policy people writing policies, but we also need people crunching the numbers and looking at data that's provided and really translating it in a way that makes sense to us.
Yeah, a lot of TV shows a lawyer's like, I have this one piece of evidence that really proves everything, but for a data analyst, we need 1,000 different pieces in order to really get convinced of the evidence.
Right. And yeah, like you said, we all bring our own personal perceptions and opinions, and so data is not so neutral. Also, where are they getting the data from, too?
Oh, absolutely. Where the source and who's paying for that source is very important to look into.
Yeah, one of the things that a colleague of mine has found frustrating is the lack of data available to the public when it comes to arrest records and convictions and things like that, and that there's not a lot of counties and cities are not compelled, or there's no consequences, I should say, if they don't post this data and make it available. And that when you contact people who are in charge of this, again, they're not compelled to share it with you. That's not good for democracy, right? If citizens can't look at these numbers and evaluate them.
Yeah, I think when we created a survey in order to interview the jurisdictions that are using these tools, we didn't want to ask, so how racist is it, 1 to 10, or is it racist or not? We wanted to look at the community impact. So has it influenced the demographic of your jail population after you start using the tool? What exactly are the demographics? What, black versus white populations? And oftentimes we came across states that are not collecting this information. So how can we truly measure the impact of these tools if we don't have that data?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest findings of the Justice Department investigation into the Ferguson Police Department and then the Baltimore Police Department, is that cities weren't keeping data on the number of police shootings of Black people, right? They didn't know. We couldn't actually pinpoint how many people were being killed by police every year. And that was very shocking. It was like, how do we not know? So now, they're trying to make sure they're collecting this data. But if they're not asking the questions and documenting it, then it makes it harder to do our work, right? Because, even as a journalist or a reporter, we're reporting on all these like studies and on research that is released as well.
Yeah, this knowledge is really power, and having the more information as possible is really part of garnering that power.
Right. Again, bringing us back to our top, like access to information, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like these are all things that we need. So we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about how we use the internet to get information like this, to help our activism and just to inform us of all kinds of things, and how net neutrality is going to, or the repeal of net neutrality impacts all of that. So you're watching the People Power Lunch Hour show on PhillyCam TV and listening on WPPM. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. So don't go anywhere. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and on today's show, we've been talking with Luong from the Media Mobilizing Project. She's an organizer. She's been working on a variety of different things. They do a lot of really great organizing and media justice work at Media Mobilizing Project. And in the first half hour, we talked about some of the broader things MMP works on, and also this latest research that she's been working on pretrial risk assessment tools. In the second half hour, we want to talk about net neutrality, which is an issue that is really important to us here at PhillyCam, and also for all of you out there that use the internet. If you use the internet for anything at all, you should be concerned about the state of net neutrality. And so net neutrality is kind of a complicated term, and we're going to break it down for you so that you understand it a little bit better. But the internet, as it was first created, was open and free, meaning you could access any website, jump around the internet on different pages, surfing the web, as they called it. And your internet service provider would not discriminate on your ability to access any of these pages based on content. So you could go to a news site, you could go to a gaming site, you could go to a shopping site with all the same speed and accessibility. And that's a great way to run the internet, right? Because whether you're an activist that has a website or a nonprofit with really valuable civic information, or you're a candidate from a third party and you're running and all of your platform issues are on a website, or you're a high school and you have information about your school online, that people going to your websites would have the same ability to go to all those sites with the same speed and ease. And so that's a good thing, right? That's the net neutrality that we're talking about, the neutralness of all of these internet service providers not discriminating against people's content. And that's on both sides, right? If you're a content provider, they're not going to slow down access to your site. If you're somebody who's accessing the web, a user, your access is not going to be slowed down either. And so that's a good thing. We like the internet the way that it's been running. But unfortunately, the FCC has recently voted to change that by repealing net neutrality. So Dee, tell us a little bit what's been happening at the FCC.
Yes, Phil. So PhillyCam and also Media Mobilizing with about almost 50 local residents in Philly went to DC in front of the FCC for a rally, a massive rally for the December 14th vote. But unfortunately, they voted 3-2 in order to end the practice of a free and open web. So as of June 11th, about a month ago, we no longer have a free and open web that is accessible, so it means that internet service providers like Comcast and Time Warner Verizon could block or censor content. They could slow down the speed of certain as websites stream, and also they could charge folks like what cable companies charge, like basic versus premium packages. So they pretty much offering premium or even more premium or basic internet. So it is no longer free and accessible for all.
And that's a bad thing, right?
Yes,
Because,
right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that it is very expensive to access internet services by and large here in Philadelphia because there's not that many providers. And there's other parts of the world where there's many, many internet service providers. But here where we live, there's not that many. And across the country, a lot of places, there's only one internet service provider.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like one or two max, and of course, in places like Tennessee, could charge upwards of $800 a month for access, and most residents, I believe, are paying around $100, and that's astronomical for someone on a fixed income.
Yeah, just to get their basic information needs. So we're going to back this up a little bit because this didn't just come out of nowhere, right? There was actually a big campaign to formalize, this net neutrality because the internet was already operating that way, but there weren't any rules or any policies written down that legalized that or made it a formal policy. So advocacy groups in a coalition with the Media Action Grassroots Network and Voices for Internet Freedom, Free Press, many, many organizations worked together for many years to advocate to the FCC to establish net neutrality rules so that we would have these protections in writing. And part of that was establishing the internet as a public utility that could then be regulated by the FCC under what's called Title II. And so that happened a few years ago. I believe it was like 2015, around that time. Very exciting, right? It was a huge victory. And during that time, President Obama was in office. The FCC was led by Chairman Janikowski, and they had a majority, 3-2, at the FCC level. And so those rules were established and those protections were put in place. And we were all super excited because it was a lot of movement organizing. And we had rallies here in Philadelphia, MMP, and Philly Cam. Many others have been working on this for many years. And then, of course, with a new president, a new administration, and new appointments to the FCC, some major changes took place. And so under Ajit Pai's leadership, he's the new chair of the commission. He's the one who actually proposed the repeal of net neutrality rules. And him and other big media companies have said that net neutrality rules are an overreach of the FCC's power and that the FCC shouldn't have oversight over the internet in that way. And that was the impetus for them to repeal the rules. They also said that it would be better for customers, right? Which was like absolutely ridiculous. And there was a lot of falsehoods put forth, false narratives about how this is going to create greater competition and better services and more access, none of which we believe to be true. And unfortunately, with a Republican majority in the commission, they voted 3-2 to repeal net neutrality. And so I just want to shout out, retiring Commissioner Meon Clyburn, who was one of our big advocates and champions at the FCC, who, really fought with us, to maintain net neutrality. And then the other thing we should also mention is the thousands and thousands of comments filed by the public in support of net neutrality. Tens of thousands of comments, in fact. So many comments that it crashed the FCC server.
Yes.
So, now you go to the FCC, I was like, not really working so well because so many comments were filed. So there was a huge public display of support for net neutrality, yet they rescinded it anyway.
And in addition to that, there bipartisan research has been done to say 90% of Democrats, 82% of Republicans, and about 85% of independents are opposed what the FCC has done to end an open and freely accessible web. And so the Senate heard, and that's why in May 2018, they voted, the U.S. Senate voted 52 to 47 in order to oppose what the FCC is doing. And this is why we're excited for this chance to push ahead to the House of Representatives. And moving forward, this is what we're, especially here under Philly Camp's leadership, and also MMPs really happy to help out to organize this effort that's going to be taking place this week.
Yes. So, when a federal agency passes rules or regulations or makes any type of decision that the Congress finds unfavorable or doesn't agree with, they have this opportunity through a Congressional Review Act to undo those rulings or regulations. And so that's what's happening right now is the Senate voted through the Congressional Review Act to undo the rescinding of net neutrality. I hope you're staying with us and you're following because it's very complicated, and that's part of the challenge is like explaining all of the things. So right now the Senate is on board, and we're focusing on the House of Representatives, right? And so both parts of Congress have to vote for it. So we just need a small number of Congress people to then sign on to what's called a discharge petition. And a discharge petition would put the Congressional Review Act up for a vote. Otherwise, they can't vote on it. And so that is what we're working on, to get members of the House of Representatives to sign on to the discharge petition, and then later on to vote in favor of the Congressional Review Act. And then that would, stop AGPI, and that would protect net neutrality. Okay. I hope we broke it down in terms of like how laws are made and regulations are made, etc. This is where the public comes in, right? Because one of those representatives that we would like to sign on to the discharge petition is here in Philadelphia. And his name is Representative Dwight Evans. And he has spoken in the past in support of net neutrality. And he's done a lot of work advocating for the poor, and he's been very progressive on many issues. So let's talk about what we're going to do to try to convince him.
And the statement of support net neutrality is currently available on his homepage, so you can check that out. And so we, this Thursday at noon, we're there to remind him about his past support of net neutrality and to remind him how much we need his vote in order, because in total we need about 218 votes in the House. So this includes all of the Democrats and additional Republicans.
Mm-hmm. And so far there has been bipartisan support, right?
Yes.
And because people have limited access to broadband technologies and internet here in Philadelphia, you would think you would want to make it as free and open to your constituents as possible. So again, not just Dwight Evans, but there's other representatives. I think you mentioned another one in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there's also Robert Brady and also, I believe, Cartwright and Fitzpatrick. Brian Fitzpatrick. Yeah.
So it's really great if you can call your representatives and let them know how you feel, right? This is part of our democracy, having this interaction with our elected officials. And it doesn't matter if you voted for them or not. You can still pick up the phone. And I think phoning is really effective, like talking to a staffer, explaining your position, telling your story. Sending emails is also great too. And one of the other things is like trying to go to their office and meet with them. You can look on the congressional calendar. If you look at the House Whip calendar, I found this out. You can see the schedule of Congress, right? It's hard to know like when they're in Washington, D.C., when they're in district, when they're taking long breaks. And so you can go to the House Whip calendar, just, Google that, it'll come right up. And then you'll see when they're going to be here in Philadelphia. And when they're in district, that's a great time to contact them and to say, hey, I hear that you haven't voted for this discharge petition for net neutrality, and I'm in favor of a free and open internet. I think people sometimes are like nervous, like, what do I say? Like, what would you tell somebody who's like, what do I tell Dwight Evans or my representative?
Well, on a personal level, because I'm an immigrant, and so many members of my family do not speak English, and so our access to local ethnic media requires the internet, and having and if companies if ISPs are in charge, they would. Local media won't have the chance, especially ethnic media. There are languages that are not in English, won't have the chance to compete with the more mainstream media. In addition to that, as someone who writes poetry as a hobby, the ability just to explore everything that's available on the web and also share this information. And I also like to, I see myself very entrepreneurial, and if I have an idea for a startup, how could I possibly compete with the companies that are currently in existence if they could afford faster internet speed? And mom and pop shops just simply can't stay in business if they have to pay additional fees for the same speed as a larger multinational company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those personal stories, like just explaining how like you are directly affected, I think is so effective. Here at PhillyCam, if you're a producer at PhillyCam, someone that creates content, even if you viewing out there, an independent producer, you probably use the internet to distribute your content. Our radio producers put things on podcasting sites like Mixcloud and SoundCloud and iTunes, and it requires people to stream it online. Many of our television producers put things on YouTube, because not everyone can afford access to cable TV, so they're putting it on YouTube as another way to reach their audiences. Our young people, our youth, they're putting everything on Instagram and Snapchat, some are on Facebook. But, they're really using social media as a way to distribute their message and their content. And so it's already really hard to compete with like mainstream commercial media. The fact that we're able to utilize the internet and circulate our content for free.
Yes.
You can go anywhere that has Wi-Fi. As long as you have a device, you can check out our content. You could even watch our show right now is streamed on our website and is uploaded on YouTube later on. So it would really impact our ability to create independent media, distribute it, and have people access it, all of our fans and listeners and viewers out there. Imagine that they would go to see our show, which provides lots of important information like we're doing right now, and they would get that Mac wheel of death, I call it,
True.
or the buffering signal, and you wouldn't be able to read. Imagine if you were looking for election information and you wanted to read about all the candidates, and all the third-party candidates' sites were slowed down. That would really affect our ability to gather information about who to vote for. I think as an activist, a lot of our organizing happens online as well, and part of a lot of social media groups where we exchange information, we share news stories, we talk about, all of these policy level things. And it would be really hard to do our work, especially in a national coalition, if we didn't have a free and open internet. So for all of those reasons, we want to advocate for net neutrality.
It's both freedom of speech and also freedom to associate. And I've heard other advocates say that Black Lives Matter wouldn't have happened if they weren't able to use the social media platforms. And also other movements from health to environment need to work together in our own corners of the country as a national movement, and to build that through associating with each other over the web.
Yeah, one of the things I just read this week is that more than half of adults now say they get their news and information from social media, right? So again, relying less on traditional mass media like television and radio and going to the internet. And so if that's the case, they're going to charge us more money. And I just want to clarify something that Dee mentioned earlier about packaging things. I just want to flesh that out a little bit more. In the same way that when you purchase cable, they offer you a basic package, and then you can get premium sites like HBO and Stars and I don't know, some of the pay-per-view sites, whatever. You have to pay extra for those. It would be like packaging a basic internet package and then paying more for sites like Netflix and YouTube and Facebook. Those would be like your premium channels. So imagine you're already paying a subscription fee to Netflix, but then you'd have to pay another fee just to get that included in your internet sites. And again, it's just, people can't afford that, especially here in Philadelphia. We're the largest, poorest city in the country. And so for all those reasons, we need to really protect the internet. There's a lot of really great websites that you can check out. Freepress.net is really great. They've been really doing a lot. There's demandprogress.org has been organizing. Fight for the Future is another organization. Voices for Internet Freedom. And then, of course, Center for Media Justice as well. And the Media Action Grassroots Network, which we're a part of through PhillyCam and Media Mobilizing Project. So there's an event happening tomorrow in Philadelphia at Representative Dwight Evans' district office. And so we're all going to come out and we're going to just let him know that we support net neutrality and we understand that he has supported it and that we would like him to take action with us together in community.
It's going to be really
fun.
Sunny.
Yeah, so bring the sign.
Yeah, say hi to us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, protests aren't always like protests. It's a lot of time it's like you meet people, you build solidarity, you exchange ideas, you network, you find out other people's opinions and information on the matter. So I always love the opportunity to go to things like this just to kind of meet who are the other people that care about this issue and how can we work together and how can we raise awareness about what's going on, because it's kind of flying under the radar right now.
Yeah, and this is only one event of about 70 that's going to take place nationally. So we really, similar to how we were in December 2017, there were the Verizon store rallies, and that, it brought out about 100 people from Philadelphia. And I think we'll probably see something similar tomorrow.
Okay, so stay tuned. We're going to be offering some coverage of that as well and keeping people posted. And then on Monday, on July 23rd, there is a citywide call-in day, right? And so if you can't make it out tomorrow, call in on Monday. And again, I'm not telling you what to say, but tell your representatives how they feel. And if you are a constituent of Representative Evans' district, then definitely contact him and express your opinion and let them know how you will be personally affected by an internet that's not open and free and how that is detrimental to our democracy. All right, well, I want to thank you for being on the show and talking with me and sharing all this knowledge and for just the work that you do.
No, thank you, Vanessa, really leading the way for helping us fight net neutrality in Philadelphia and also nationally.
Yes, well, we got to, put the information out there while we still can before we're slowed down. And so for more information, tell people how they can contact Media Mobilizing Project and learn more about the work that you all do.
Oh yeah, you feel free to find us on the web. We also are on Twitter. And also, if you want to learn more about the action that's taking place tomorrow, battleofthenet.com. And this is where you can find the address and all that. And so his office, if we want to say, is 7174 Oregons Avenue. And so Thursday, July 19th at noon. We'll be there.
And their website is mediamobilizing.org. And definitely follow us at PhillyCam. On our social media, especially, we've been posting all the events and the information about the actions. So there you have it, all the information you need about net neutrality so that you can be informed and take action if needed. And I want to thank all of our interns and producers of the show for helping us on the People Power Lunch Hour show. If you'd like to view this episode or any of our past episodes, or if you would like to create your own media, visit our website at phillycam.org. I'm Vanessa Maria Graber, here with Dee Luong on the People Power Lunch Hour show. Thank you all for watching and listening.